Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about karmic consent, mass trauma, mass psychosis, mass ritual. Where does it come from? What is the motivation behind it? Why are these people so demented and twisted? Because they do not share the same belief system or ideology that any of us do. As diverse as we are, they are even more different. People have always joined groups to ensure social and intellectual security. Mystery cults or mystery schools operate on a system that is indeed a cult and has characteristics similar to MK Ultra. The death and rebirth of the cycle, inversion and constant confusion only after indoctrination. They hide pagan symbolism and rituals in plain sight. A large chunk of those mystery cults have much in common with the cults of Dionysus and the cults of Isis or Ishtar. They are sex and or death cults that require blood sacrifice and sacrificing children. Their dark arts lineage stretches all the way back to the blood drinkers in the Bible, a tribe called the Amalekites. They practice the dark arts. They are from the lineage of Esau. A curse was put on Canaan. Canaan was the inbred son of Ham and the wife of Noah, his mother. Because of this curse, no one was supposed to mate with the Canaanites. The Canaanites were Horites and Hittites. Those people had the genetic material of giants. Amalek is the grandson of Esau and a Hittite woman. He started a tribe called the Amalekites. That name means the blood lickers, as in people who would drink blood. In Exodus, Moses is leading the people through the wilderness. They encounter cursed cities. One of the tribe that attacks them is the Amalekites, the blood lickers. So these mass rituals that you see on television with people wearing strange costumes and performing strange rituals, these things are very old. And those people are very new to this game and don't really understand what they've gotten themselves into by bringing back these very old religions. Through inversion, the traditional stories and belief systems are turned upside down.
Some of these people are doing this shit just for fashion, to be different. And I get it, Christianity ain't perfect, but when they discover this shit, they think it's like a new toy, a shiny penny or some shit.
Like it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah, this is some really evil shit. You open it by saying, what'd you say? Karmic, what'd you say?
Karmic consent.
I think what happens is that sometimes we don't realize that when we're helping people, the reason they're going through that shit is because that's their karma coming back on them. I think sometimes we're too busy trying to. There's nothing wrong with helping somebody. That's not what I'm saying. But you got to recognize what these people are going through is something that they stirred up on their own. And if they're receiving their karma, you need to get out the way and let them learn whatever lesson they need to learn. Right now, we're going through the shit with this LGBTQ stuff, and whatever letter they stick on the end. Yeah, I don't want somebody to be mistreated because of who they are, but what they're doing back, it ain't the same thing. You know, when they're marching and they're saying, we're coming for your kids and all this other shit. You got a whole organization, NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association. There's some really sick shit out there, and they're trying to include that in that movement. So like I said, when these motherfuckers suffer a loss or when something happens, you got to let them receive their karma and stop trying to play God, if you will.
So they use inversion of the traditional stories and belief systems, and they turn them upside down. Instead of starting with something that's totally brand new or pushing their own story, they want to warp and distort the traditional stories and belief systems that people are used to. The Gnostics are a perfect example of that inversion. That manifests in the beliefs of the Knights Templar and the Cathars and their worship of Mary Magdalene. This leads to disillusionment and arrogance. Do as thou wilt. Sacrifices that begin with small animals and then progress to children. What we're seeing are these large events where they have a captured audience and everybody is paying attention, and you have 30 million viewers. Well, 33, really? You knew it was exactly 33 million? No. You're speaking that into existence because you're casting spells. But this really didn't exist in the public until after, in living color, used the Super Bowl halftime show to steal that audience, to entertain people and make them laugh. Now, people are hearing this and thinking, oh, you blaming In Living Color? No. That's the turning point where everything changed, because the year after In Living Color broadcast during the boring-ass halftime show for NFL Super Bowl Sunday, the next year they hired Michael Jackson to perform. And then slowly in the years following, you began to see all these weird, pagan, ritualistic symbols being shown and displayed, while these people of influence, these thought leaders, pop artists, are entertaining people. So they're casting this visual spell to get the will of all the people into this. But they have to have your karmic consent. What is your karmic consent? You're tuning in. You're buying a ticket to the sporting event. You're participating in this. If they just bring this upon you, then they cast bad karma upon themselves. They have a belief system that is tied to reincarnation. And so if they impose their will upon you without telling you, they incur a karmic debt to you. So they don't want to owe you anything. They just want to dominate and control you. So they have to tell you what they are doing. Hence the name for this episode, Karmic Consent.
They need to be a willing participant.
Yes. Often in vampire movies, you see
Yep.
a person being asked by a creature of the night, can they come in? Can I come into your home? They have to be invited in. That is true for all dark entities that want to enter your home. They have to be invited into the home. This is the karmic law that nobody, even though they're evil, can escape. So we're now seeing these strange habits and sexual proclivities of powerful people being brought out into the public eye. And you're seeing the hobbies of these strange people and the spirit cooking and their weird associations with sorceresses and sorcerers and people who practice the dark arts and these child sacrifices. So all these things are tied together. But the common person gets overloaded with all this stuff, and they just brush it off and they go back to drinking their Bud Light and eating their microwave dinner and watching Netflix. That is all done to pacify you. Now, these oligarchs, what they do is they set strict intellectual and social limits on the population. It is a system that is based on scarcity, and it slowly the levels of scarcity increase, causing people to turn on each other. This takes the attention away from the oligarchs. But this blueprint is being used by technocrats, these people who have used technology to climb the ladder in society and gain control of our everyday lives. These technocrats lack true self-love and self-awareness because the system that they fight to protect suppresses their own humanity. When you examine the behavior of these people within these tech companies, within these ministries of science, we'll call them, who worship at the altar of scientism, they always see the human being as less than. And this is a feudalistic mentality that comes from the Royal Society of London, and even before them, the dark arts practitioner, Sir Francis Bacon. But let's look at the wealthy families of medieval Europe. When you look at them, you can see the building blocks of today's ruling elite. The Italian writer Machiavelli gathered source material for his book The Prince from watching the Italian elite. The public would see the treaties and agreements and the dynastic marriages, but behind the scenes, people like Machiavelli would witness the use of assassins, sorcerers, poisons, and rituals. These arcane traditions go back to Orphism, and then from there forward to the Neoplatonists, and even more forward to the elite families of the Byzantine Empire, and from there to the elite families of Italy. A whole structure of education that teaches high magical teachings related to the key of Solomon. The Christian Emperor Justinian attempted to eliminate these groups in their teachings, but he was unsuccessful because these Byzantine imperial civic workers had been brainwashed in the teachings of Hellenistic education. The Venetian power elite were the continuation or the holdovers from the remaining Roman Empire. In the 1530s, a guy named Francesco Zorzi was the figurehead of the Rosicrucian takeover of Europe. The Venetians were the main supporters behind King Henry VIII breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church. Everybody that read about this and learned about that said, oh, well, that's a good thing. But what happened is it was a control mechanism by splintering the church into multiple groups and creating endless wars that would generate endless income for them. So when King Henry VIII split from the Roman Catholic Church, the Anglican Church of England was created. And Venetians also helped to create the Jesuit organization in the 1500s in 1534. The Byzantine imperial elite were self-proclaimed pagans because they were educated in Hellenistic literature and philosophy. Paganism was a natural part of that mindset. Orphism is an experiential, esoterical practice that places the focus of one's own moral development instead of abiding by the rules of a moral religious authority. Bloodlines are a very important part of this belief system because these people are consciously working to be reincarnated into a ruling class family. Now, if you look at Tibetan Buddhist lamas, you see something that's kind of similar, where they're doing their best to be devout Buddhist and live a clean life, but they want to be reincarnated close to these temples, close to a family that will get them back into the temple. But whereas these Buddhist lamas don't really have a reputation for doing a whole lot of evil shit, these people on the other side of that coin do. So when you look closely at Orphism, it is clear that all Greek theology is the offspring of the Orphic mystical doctrine. The Orphic doctrine begins with Kronos, the great serpent giving birth to an egg. The egg splits and becomes the earth and the sky. Understand that Kronos is Saturn, and that began the religion of Saturn worship. Saturn, or Kronos, has been called by many different names. The people of Carthage called him Baal Haman, B-A-A-L, Haman, as in Baal worship. In the Bible, he is called Moloch. Where have we heard this name before? In most recent years, the name Moloch appears at Bohemian Grove. There you will find a ritual called the cremation of care. It is a mock child sacrifice. To the Gnostics, he is the demiurge. You see, the ruling elites of the world seek to escape the birth-death cycle and use transhumanism technology and ancient Saturnian Orphic ritual magic to do that. There it is. That's their playbook. But you got to understand that when you see things like school shootings, when you see things like this race relations going south and people fighting against each other, these things are being done on purpose. So much is being done to gaslight you, to get your attention away from who is really doing us dirty.
I think that the biggest issue you have whenever you try to have these conversations with people, and they're like, well, we say the same thing. We said it. They always want to say, somebody really died. Somebody died. Do you think? Yes, they will sacrifice people to get what they want. We've seen it over and over again. We've seen it throughout history. So when we sit here and say school shootings, you're going to argue with us and say that you mean to tell me the federal government planned that? Maybe, maybe not. But half these kids are antidepressants. We read about this shit in Behold a Pale Horse back in '92. You know, half these kids are on certain medications. Half these kids are on steroids. Half these parents don't want to be honest with you about the situation. We just recently had a school shooting in my town. I live in Omaha, Nebraska. Mom kept saying the boy was being bullied. Spoke to my daughter. First thing out of her mouth, she was like, that was gang related, which is what we thought. But again, so you can't make an accurate decision on what's really going on, and how the news reports it is a bigger factor than what actually happened. Because that news, look, I'm not a Trump fan, but he's had 2 assassination attempts. They're not talking about it. the media don't like Trump anymore. At one point, he was the golden child. Now they don't like him. He's had 2 attempts on his life. Whether he deserves it or not, we're not arguing that. But what I'm simply saying is that second guy, he is weird. How did he get his money? How did he move around? He was over there fighting in Europe, in the Russian war. He's doing all this stuff. So you when you have a media that's not being honest with its people, you have this problem, and you can't make an accurate decision, or you can't see the truth, what's really going on, that these things are interconnected and that these behaviors are encouraged. So when we sit here and tell you that they need your permission to come in your house, well, when you sit here, I want to give y'all an example. When you do that consent form for an app, why the fuck do I need to do a consent and check a box and all this other shit? But you are literally giving them permission to come in your house. Now, hey Roscoe, I got a story for you. Recently, I guess some chick died at Disney World. She ate something. It had a peanut. She had a peanut allergy.
She's a doctor, Asian woman.
Yeah, and she eats it. She dies. How did Disney get out of that? Do you know?
Yeah, so she signed up for Disney Plus. And
her husband signed up.
When her husband signed up for Disney Plus, by clicking to agree to the terms of service, that means you opt out of any type of lawsuit against
Disney. I get it. You guys think this is we're being paranoid, but literally you gave that vampire permission to come in your house. Now you go down there for a leisurely afternoon to enjoy yourself, to get away from work, and your wife dies from a peanut allergy, and you can't sue them. Now, I'm sure they're going to settle out of court. I'm sure it's going to go farther than that. But did you think for one moment the fact that you had Disney Plus would stop you from righting a wrong that was done to you and your family? Yeah, so be careful who you give permission in your house. That's what we're telling you. Well, look, hey, we grew up on Lost Boys. You remember when old boy knocked on the door? Like, are you going to invite me in? She's like, yeah, sure. That shit right there. That charming motherfucker was the head vampire. And we don't. I guess, like I said, you're making light of the situation because we're kind of joking, but we're serious. You need to know who you're inviting in your house, and sometimes you need to say no. Sometimes you don't need to run that update. Sometimes you don't need to check that box. And I get it. I like being able to save my games too that I play on my phone. But it ain't worth having Facebook if you don't agree with everything that's on that motherfucker.
But so what people get caught up in is the small things that are being done to sow the confusion at you.
Mm-hmm.
The tiny things that you shouldn't be paying attention to. There are so many things that can be targeted towards you in your algorithm that will manipulate you on a psychological level.
You mess up? Sometimes we focus at, you don't see the shit on the side. You think the shit on the side ain't important. That shit is just as important as the stuff that's in your view. The things that you think are minor are usually major, and that's how they get you.
Right. So Senator Elizabeth Warren is now being targeted by Google because she said she wanted to break up their control over the media landscape. So ever since she said that, she has lost all type of donor support. She was not picked to be the candidate to run for Senate again in her district. She was replaced by her own party because they have control over the political landscape. People have to understand who started Google. Google was started by the CIA. Facebook was started by the CIA.
Period.
All these things, all these social media experiments, these are types of psychological warfare. If you want to know what MK Ultra looks like now, all you got to do is fire up your phone and go to Instagram or Twitter or any of them. They are the newest iteration of that. Look at what happened to the people that were running Parler. They got shut down because they basically would not turn over their servers to the U.S. government. And so because the U.S. government wanted to just go through their servers, and basically they wanted to invade them like they've done the other social media platforms. And because they wouldn't do that, the guy gets caught up in some honeypot arrest scheme in Paris. And now that motherfucker's in jail right now. And they're probably torturing the shit out this guy. Apple, because Apple is so big, if Apple was any smaller, they would have been out of business. But when they were trying to get into the iPhones, FBI wanted to get into the iPhones years ago. and they wanted to get the user information. Apple said, no, our phones aren't built like that. We build them to protect people. Oh, that was a big deal. They went to the Supreme Court and they're fighting, trying to get the shit done and everything.
I remember they can get into Apple, the iPhone 8 or 9, but they can't get into it. It was a whole thing.
Right. Exactly. So people forget that the news that they watch is basically a construct. So I was listening to an interview with Johnny Cash's former attorney, and he was Johnny Cash's attorney while Johnny Cash was at the top of his fame. And right before Johnny Cash was about to get a TV show on the major networks, he had to go through the record labels. And his attorney said that he would not meet with certain people within the labels. And he wouldn't tell his attorney. So the attorney asked his wife, June Carter Cash. And June said it's because the people that he wouldn't meet with are Luciferians. And I was like, yep, they're all through that music industry. These people that are worshiping the dark arts and these old religions. Now, the same lawyer made a very interesting remark within the same interview. He also said that he went to a press meeting. No, he went to a press dinner once, and he said Peter Jennings was there. And he said after a couple of drinks, Peter Jennings began to loosen up and talk a little bit more than just surface conversation. He said that the news that we see is a narrative that's built to reinforce the construct that is our reality. When a person like that, who is basically at the tip of the spear when it comes to Operation Mockingbird, who's seen all these major events in American history, who's old enough to have experienced that and been there, like as an investigative reporter in the field,
as a true observer,
and he says our reality is a construct. For those people that don't understand what that word means, it means it's a fabrication. It means it's a collection of lies, like a house of cards, that's stacked up all around you to support everything, every system, every service that keeps this society going. So that's why when you go to some of these third world countries, it's as if you're living in, ancient times, because that 60 cycle hum is not in the background. That, that sound that you hear that goes out when the power goes out. When the power goes out, it's like the earth has just exhaled. And I would feel this when I was a little kid, when a tornado would come by and the lights would go out. And it was like we were like living in ancient times.
Look, that's the problem with my ADHD. When we were in grade school, I'd be listening to the lights, not listening to the teacher. Like, damn, you don't hear that buzz, nigga? Like, literally everything had that hum. Now, I don't know if we just don't hear it anymore because we were used to it, we become acclimated, or because it's not there.
No, but I record this show. I hear everything, dude. Like, I pay attention to planes flying by. If you've ever been a filmmaker or you worked in film and you're outside shooting something, dude, the sound man will remind you of everything that should not be on the recording. He's like, hold on, there's a plane flying by. There's somebody in the back playing music. You got to unplug that refrigerator. All these things around you that you don't pay attention to because there's all this noise. You're in this ocean of noise all the time. And I'll bring it back to our topic of discussion. That ocean of noise you can use as an analogy for confusion. So then this confusion that's cranked up, and I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today, and I said, we are in the gaslighting season right now. Pay attention to what happens when somebody's running for president, when there's a presidential campaign season. There is all these events that they want you to focus on, that they crank up the attention. They go hire crisis actors to go and shoot black people and put on police uniforms, and they pay for immigrants to get on buses and come into the country. They pay for immigrants to move from Haiti to Ohio to live in houses they can't afford. And so they pay them, the landlord, $2,000 a month when the house is only worth like $850 a month. And they drive all these things up so you be pissed off about stuff to vote on things. People are wondering why, man, why are they sending those Haitian people over there? Why are they sending, like, it used to be like Mexicans were coming up from Mexico. Ain't no Mexicans coming up from Mexico. It's Guatemalans. It's people from South America. It's people from Afghanistan that fell off them planes. It's people from China.
Venezuela. They go to China to Venezuela. Yeah,
they got all these sleeper cell Chinese troops that are sneaking into America with buzz cuts and lean muscular bodies and shit. I'm like, hold on, man, you don't look like a sweatshop worker at all. So what the fuck and you got combat boots on? Shoot this motherfucker.
The one thing I thought you was going to touch on that you didn't when you were talking about Apple and all these. Did you? I just saw an article about when Elon bought Twitter. He fired 80% of the people. So in my mind, I'm thinking, man, he's just a dick. He's not this good billionaire. Well, there's no such thing as a good billionaire, but you know what I'm saying. But when you listen to what he says and he breaks it down, do you know what those 80% of the employees were? They were the ones who were doing the fact checking. It was like literally, that's how many fact checkers that Twitter and all. I can't imagine what Facebook has, but literally 80% of the employees weren't employees running servers. And
oh wow,
yes, they were the fact checkers. These are the people that sat there and saw what you posted, and if you said something about an issue they didn't like, they said it was health misinformation and all that. So that's why Twitter was so different, because when he fired them folks, it really became a bastion of free speech, because they don't have that filter that these other organizations or social media outlets have.
On the flip side of that, there's also an algorithm that sends a lot of bullshit to your phone. As opposed to you being proactive to go look for this shit, it just comes to you on your timeline.
Oh yeah. They can influence how you think by sending you certain stuff.
Right. So all I'm saying is, before you go giving this guy props for being a superhero.
Oh, I didn't.
I understand I'm being a smartass, but understand, everybody, that this guy is he's a son.
He's Antichrist.
He's a son. He's a son of a guy who was making a bunch of money during apartheid in ruby mines. Okay, during apartheid, oppressed black people. And you're making money taking natural resources out of the African country. So what does he do? He becomes just like his father. So then he needs, to instead of okay, all he did was shift his focus from being somebody who extracts the minerals. Now he makes products that require the extraction of those minerals. So his electric car, rockets.
The cobalt in that electric car comes from the Congo, and them motherfuckers are chopping the hands off of 12-year-olds just to make them get more cobalt for your electric car. And then let's not talk about the diesel fuel that runs the generator. Yeah, you're right. I'm not saying he's a better dude, but I'm just trying to point out the fact that them people he fired, they weren't just working on the Twitter assembly line. You know what I'm saying? And this is another thing me and you talked about on two of the podcasts, was that he had an idea for online banking back in like 98 or 2000, whatever, and he wanted to call it X. So when he changed the name of Twitter to X, I'm like, y'all watch. He's going to say that he's going to give you all bank accounts and say that you're already customers. And and what you gonna do? Turn them down? Yeah. So yeah, he's not some benevolent motherfucker. You get it? He's still a piece of shit. I'm just stating the fact that most of those employees were the fact checkers and the ones, blocking your account and doing all this crazy. Like on Facebook, I post stuff that I got off Facebook, and the next thing I know, I get flagged and I'm in Facebook jail for posting something I got off Facebook. How the fuck does that work? So yeah, we have, those are fake identities. Those are fake people pretending to be your friends from high school, and they're turning you in if you post anything they don't like, motherfucker. That's what I was saying.
Right, but what I want to know is, why aren't people making more of an uproar about these mass rituals that you see for the Olympics, that you see
Oh,
for
that's
major
easy.
sporting events, that you see for music, award shows. And I'm like, what happened to just entertaining people?
Look, me and you again. This is a conversation we had off the air, but it's nothing personal. How many times do you see, not even a sporting event, but when you see like a comedian like Kevin Hart, and there's flames in the back, and he's like, "There's flames. What are they there for?" That's because you're watching a ritual. This I can't we can't stress this enough. This is some kind of blood sacrifice, crazy shit going on. A prime example when I remember the MTV Awards. I think it's the one where Whitney died. And if you watch Roman, which was Nicki Minaj's character, they had nothing but priests and nuns dancing with devils and shit. That's not normal. When you sit here and watch Kevin Hart have a comedy special and they shooting flames in the air, that is a ritual. Like I said, some sporting events you see flames, okay, maybe cool, but you're not paying attention because when you bring up the Olympics, this year was bad, but the one 4 years ago, what they had, like before we had COVID, they had one, and they showed you a
In the
virus.
UK, in the UK, that was
Yeah,
the British one.
they had a
That's when
virus.
they had all the dancing doctors and nurses,
Yeah,
and this
what the
this
fuck?
was this was what 2020, and it's crazy because like this was maybe the month after the George Floyd situation, and 3 months into the pandemic, and I'm like, oh, they're
That's
just
important.
showing everybody what they're doing. They have to show you what they're doing so that they can have your karmic consent.
Yeah, when you clap, you give approval to that shit. When you sit there and
That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because it's like it's like it's like a blank check that like we put everyone just sign it, don't worry about it. We'll fill the money in later. That's what they're doing.
Okay,
And
but I want to say something. People need to understand that when these plans come down, the grips and the union people on the ground that are building this thing, they have no fucking idea what they're building. They're just doing the job. When the management that are controlling the union people that are there in the arena working, they have no fucking idea. They're just doing their fucking job. But the people that design these things, the people that design this imagery, well, I'll tell you what, the piccolo player truly is a motherfucker. When you look at who was behind the Paris Olympics and what type of imagery that they wanted to show people. So a lot of this had ball worshiper energy. There was this bull, like when you look at the stage that has the band playing and it has the athlete standing there. A bull was displayed on the stage at the opening ceremony. That is directly connected to Baal worship. And then you go in and you look for other things and you see, okay, well, who was the guy that designed the opening ceremony? What is this guy's like? What's he talking about? Like what? Who is this
what's his
guy?
thing? What's his trip? What's he on?
Right, and what is this really about? So then you dig into this thing and you see that this guy that put on this show, he was basically promoting his own Talmudic religion to the masses during the Paris Olympics, and a lot of it was based in the cults of Dionysus, and there was a little Kabbalah that was thrown in also. And then you see the inversion of the Last Supper, and people are like, "Oh, that's not the Last Supper." That's based on a painting that is an inversion of the Last Supper. But it's crazy. So then
They're mocking
every
Christianity in front of
every
you. They're mocking
Kabbalist
your principles.
every Kabbalist is invited to participate in this gender play, imitating God, who is the Sephiroth, a kind of multi-gendered, transgendering, hermaphrodite drag queen wearing the mask of different genders at different times and seeking partners who do the same. Pious Jews beg God's sweet feminine side to come out on the Sabbath, but beg God's mean feminine side to be sweetened by the softer masculine attributes of loving kindness. And if we take seriously the Zohar's repeated insistence that Kudo Chada, that everything is one, and the reality is the true ground of existence, then the entire gender masquerade is part of a divine dance or striptease enacting concealment and revelation. Dressing up and undressing is a sort of theological carnival. So the male Kabbalists are even explicitly unifying with the Shekinah rather than taking their role in unification with the male potencies. Their union is far from ordinary heterosexual one. In many books, the Malkut stands, as it were, as part of the idol calls the triadic model, a triad model, 3, between two male lovers in a kind of menage a trois between the earthly realm and below the male godhead, mediated by Yesod, the supernatural or supernal Zadik. Indeed, it's the view that the whole point of this mystical unification with Malkut is to confuse those who do not understand. So there is an entire ritual that's happening right here. There's different flavors of this thing. So this is ancient Talmudic religion that you can find some of it in the Zohar, and then some of it is based on Orphism or Hellenistic ideas or philosophies. But it all comes back to Saturn worship. See, what I've just described is 2 different cultures, 3 different cultures, but they all worship Kronos, Saturn. This is all about Saturn worship, which is why you see that black cube in the Holy Land. People wonder, what the hell is that black cube about? That is Saturn worship. Anywhere around the world where you see a black cube in a prominent location, that is Saturn worship. That's Saturn worship, man. Wild shit in your face. But you don't bother to look beneath the surface and figure out what that's about.
That's because you don't want to be anti-Semitic. When you talk about the Talmud and you find out what it is, at face value, oh shit, that's some ancient shit. That's the Jewish stuff. I don't want to, and you don't read any further. But when you start reading further, and see what they believe.
Here's the thing, though. The Jews get a bad rap because they won't call out those in their group, within their midst, that are not true Jews. The ones that are Khazarians, that are hiding in plain sight, and they chose to merge with Judaism during the time of Babylon, when they were a small group of sorcerers who snuck into Babylon. So, like I said, let's go all the way back to the blood lickers in the Bible. And it will tell you how this shit started. Say what you will about the Bible, but man, it is hella supernatural. And there is a lot of crazy supernatural stuff in the Bible when it talks about these people and their dark art lineage that goes all the way back to Esau. Now, Esau was a trip because he was born covered with hair and red.
We know one thing. He was covered with hair. That was not a normal birth.
And it was red. But the thing is that he got with the Canaanites, and they were Horites and Hittites. These people had this demonic seed, because it really comes down to the battle of, who the bloodline is and where you come from and who is this and that. One thing that really pisses me off, and black people get caught up in this, whether you're a regular ass black person going to church, whether you're a Muslim black person criticizing this, or you're one of these cosplaying Hebrew Israelite motherfuckers. Everybody's always like, oh, black people came from Shem, and black people came from this. Negro, there were people outside of that garden. Y'all make the mistake of thinking this is our story. This is what we came from. No.
I told you, the deepest thing Farrakhan ever said is the Bible is the story of the white man. And most motherfuckers didn't get what he was saying. What he's telling you is, this tells you where the white man originated and came from. Because you got to remember, if everybody in there was black, you know what I'm saying? Pretty much everybody in the Bible was black.
Yeah, but dude, but starting with Adam and Eve's son, it all went downhill after that.
Look, I told you, in West Africa, the Nigeria.
But hold on a second. This is what y'all not seeing, though. Y'all not listening. When they're telling you that Noah's son took wives, from where? Where?
Either they were inbred or even that one son.
Well, hold on.
They
But
inherit.
didn't the flood kill everybody? So who the fuck are these guys marrying and skeeting in and have babies with?
Either either it's incest, their own sisters, or there were other people, other entities on this planet. And by doing that, then that's how we get the motherfucking Nephilim, who was supposed to be wiped
Yeah,
out.
but see, Amalek was cursed, you know, and the children of Esau were cursed. But
Well, who's the one? So when the flood is over, they talk about, oh boy, going north and going into these great cities. These great cities had already existed, but those great cities were built by these evil Nephilim motherfuckers, and that's how they ended up finding that technology that we weren't supposed to have. They had whole fucking cities that were abandoned after the flood. Of course, but
the flood did not cover the entire planet.
Look, if you want to go by the Younger Dryas, if you want to go by the flood that took place, well, it was a 48%. Half of North America was covered. Portions of Europe, a big portion of Africa was covered.
What about
not all
the southern hemisphere?
Yes, not
what
all
about
of it was covered.
The higher? What about Ethiopia, which is at a higher altitude?
Well, hold it. They find there's a couple mountains, and I don't want to lie. I think they're in Washington. They found clams, them giant clams, ones that be at the bottom of the ocean, on top of some of the mountains. The only way that could have happened is if that shit had flooded for years.
No, that's not true. Because all these mountaintops were the bottom of the ocean at some point.
Yeah, that's the flood. Now, what you're saying?
No. I'm talking about before the flood. I'm talking about millions and millions of years ago, or even a billion years ago, when the Earth was still forming, and everything was an ocean, and then slowly all that water receded into the center of the Earth. And then you get, the continents.
But you also got to understand, some of them creatures didn't exist yet, allegedly. But again,
we don't know that. We don't know that. Because what you're describing are simple creatures.
Hold it. Well, I'm talking about the giant clams. They found giant clams at the top of this motherfucker. They ain't supposed to be there.
Yeah, but the giant, anything giant like that comes from a time when there was less oxygen on the Earth.
No. Just opposite. It was more oxygen, and everything was bigger. So that's why I get what you're saying. Look. Here's the thing. Do you think that evolution really exists? Because it's a theory, and they poke holes in that theory all the goddamn time, and they hit us with the evolution. But then somebody hits you with logic, and I remember this one chick was trying to argue with me on Facebook about the Bible's fake, and she's like, it talks about unicorns in the Bible, it talks about dragons in the Bible. I'm like, well, the term dinosaur came out in, I think, 1890. The Bible was written before then. So you mean to tell me you don't think dinosaurs is just, dragon was just another term for dinosaur? And then she said, see, you think, I'm like, no, I'm just saying the word dinosaur has only been around for, 110 years? And the Bible's been around for, 2,500 years and bits and pieces. And the term, so you don't think that possibly that these big reptiles weren't considered dinosaurs, and dragons, and two, there's too many stories of these motherfuckers in the middle of Africa in the Congo saying that they still see dinosaurs. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just simply saying that word didn't exist. That's the same thing we have with the word Jesus. The letter J is only 400 years old, but the story of Jesus is 2,000 years old. So there's some reason they don't want us to call him by his actual name. So I'm just pointing out obvious shit. Then all of a sudden I'm my asshole for pointing out obvious shit. That's all I'm saying. The other look, what we're talking about is the fact that we know that there was a huge flood. It didn't cover the whole earth. There were still people left, or creatures left, whatever you want to call them. And it's too many stories from Native Americans that talk about the redhead giants in North America. It's too many motherfuckers coming out with stories. Is it Iran? I don't want to get the wrong. That there's a fucking Nephilim and Hillary Clinton wants the DNA. There's too many stories about this shit. So clearly, there's a lot of that shit in the Bible is legit. Stop thinking it's fairy tales and stop thinking it's as they taught us, unrhymed blank verse. It's poetry. It's not poetry. It's a history book. You better figure your history out.
But I find it ironic that nobody goes after the other religions except for the one that basically teaches you spiritual warfare.
Which one?
Christianity.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying. The funniest shit you used to always say is, as you used to always talk about Muslims. You say, you see, they don't be fucking with Muslims because in their religion, killing a motherfucker is okay if God says so. But they fuck with Christians. They don't fuck with them Buddhist niggas either because they'll strap a bomb to themselves and go blow your shit up or poison a subway. They fuck with these Christian motherfuckers because, turn the other cheek and all that other bullshit. And a lot of that is bullshit because God was always killing motherfuckers. He was always sending niggas to battle. You know what I'm saying? And so I think they Malcolm X'd us. You know what I'm saying? They did what to black people. They did that to everybody. So the reason we have Martin Luther King Day is because he was talking about marching. We don't have Malcolm X Day because he was talking about if a motherfucker come on your property and touch you, you send that nigga to the grave. So they as you put it, they nerfed Christianity a whole hell of a lot. And then they spoon-fed it back to the population, not just black folks, the whole population, to keep motherfuckers, But then the crazy part is the Klan, them motherfuckers is Christian too, right? And they be loving to kill niggas. So it's okay to kill as long as you kill a motherfucker that don't look like you. That kind of shit.
But talk about who actually started the Klan, though.
Jewish guy, Joseph, Benjamin. Oh, God damn it. What's his name? He's the one who went to England. He saw, oh, God. I want to say Joseph Benjamin. That's not his name. God, dog it.
Judah Benjamin.
Judah Benjamin, excuse me. And Judah Benjamin was one of the head guys that started the Klan. He is Jewish. And he made, in fact, the reason they wear white robes is because he had the cotton. Yeah, so that whole thing.
The KKK was financed from England by the Jewish former Secretary of the State for the Confederacy, Benjamin P. Judah. He was a lawyer in the United States before the American Civil War. He served as the first Attorney General in the President Jefferson Davis cabinet, and then the Confederacy's Secretary of the War before becoming Secretary of State in March of 1862 until the Civil War, when he fled south at the end of the Civil War.
I thought he was in Virginia, but yeah, he leaves, sells a bunch of cotton to the motherfuckers overseas, makes his money back because he was kicked out. He was exiled because of the Civil War, but he came back with a vengeance, didn't he? Started a whole terrorist organization. Like I said, what I guess what we're saying is the piccolo player is a motherfucker. Fix is in, and it's not who you think. The person that you think should be doing the right thing ain't doing the right thing. They just collecting money. Same way with these churches. When they become a nonprofit, Charlton White was talking about that the nonprofit was the death of black revolutionaries, because all of a sudden all these churches became nonprofits, and all these brothers started these nonprofits to get tax ID numbers and all this other shit. The next thing you know, we ain't got no more Black Panthers. We ain't got no more Deacons for Defense. We ain't got no more. Who else was kicking ass? SNCC, SCLC. The original Black Panthers that were a fucking voters movement from down south, that the Black Panthers for Self-Defense in Oakland asked them, can we use your name because we think it's a dope ass name. That shit. The whole idea that black folks have been peaceful, and the whole idea that Native Americans never fought back, and the whole idea, that's all bull feathers. And this is what I mean about media manipulation, or as you put it, what you say, karmic
consent.
Yeah, karmic consent. Like, we didn't give you consent. You just rewrote history. And again, I said this on a past podcast. They lied to you and tell you history is written by the victors. That is the biggest fucking lie in the world. The history is written by writers. And I'm gonna give you a prime example. Dante Wilder knocked out a bunch of people. Mike Tyson knocked out a bunch of people. Did Mike Tyson once write his memoirs about how he kicked ass? No. Like, he does a little stage play and he's joking, but it's all about the crazy shit he did. But his actual victories are nerdy motherfuckers that sit there and write those. So that's what I'm saying. The niggas that be kicking ass, they don't be writing. They too busy conquering. They're too busy making shit happen. And so then these other motherfuckers write the shit, and then they'll stick whatever twinge on there. You got Barry Bonds hitting all these home runs, but they got an asterisk by his name. Even if everybody was using drugs back then. Everybody was using that shit. So he was still better than them. I get it. Y'all don't want that nigga in the Hall of Fame. But if he still had more. He still had more walks than anybody else. He still had more home runs than anybody else. Even when y'all wasn't counting him, he was still kicking ass. So for some odd reason, y'all want to act like this nigga ain't the greatest because he used steroids. All them white boys use steroids. Like Giambi, he admitted the shit. You know why he admitted it? Because it didn't work. If the shit worked, niggas don't tell nothing. But when the shit ain't working, like, oh man, shit, I use steroids too, man. Fuck. Yeah, you being honest because you ain't a superstar. What we're saying is that there is a thing going on where your cognitive dissonance allows this shit to happen to you, and when you see this shit, you got to call it for what it is. You got to call it fugazi. You got to, you know what? This don't feel right. When you're watching the opening ceremony for the Olympics and you seeing all kinds of shit that you don't support. And don't get me wrong, nobody has a problem with somebody being gay or cross-dresser, but I got a problem with you trying to force this shit on my kids and, giving my kids birth control without my permission, or I'm going to the clinic to see what's going on with my daughter, and you're like, oh no, this is medical. We can't give you any information.
Right.
Like she's
so
a minor.
This brings me back to an older episode about this that we call drawbridge logic. Throughout history, city walls were made as protection from the enemy. They were usually massive structures enhanced with guard towers. Some were built on hills, making invasions more difficult, while others were near the ocean or the sea to protect the towns from invaders in ships and in some cases pirates. Castles and walled cities are surrounded by moats and drawbridges. The bridge that crosses the moat and connects to the road was drawn up and effectively closing off the castle or city from invaders. This same logic is often applied by people detecting bullshit or harm approaching. We talk about people trying to gaslight you and how to apply martial arts mentality, the martial mind, to your conversations, to your online interactions. Use it. If you have trained at all, use that in defending yourself, in positioning yourself to not be attacked. It's very useful in life if you can apply your martial mind or your training to everything that you encounter. I'm not saying be defensive. I'm saying be reflexive and reactive. Be like water, like Bruce said. These people out here are attempting to mind fuck us, but we cannot allow that. We have to be proactive. We have to be proactive in the way we think, in keeping our mind and our eyes away from poison. Here's I'm going to give everybody an assignment to do. 30 minutes before going to sleep, do not look at your phone. Now, you may have an alarm. Turn the alarm on and put it away from you. Don't put it on the nightstand. Put it someplace where you have to get up out the bed to go turn the alarm off.
That blue light is motherfucker. Keep your ass up, fuck up your thoughts, all that shit.
Exactly. Do not look at unnatural light while you are trying to sleep. Turn off the lights, use blackout curtains, turn everything off. Sleep in the dark. I mean, you can let the natural light of the moon or the stars come through your skylight or through your window. That's fine. But street lights and artificial lights and all these stupid fucking LED lights that are everywhere on every fucking thing, and these people with their dumbass headlights on their cars where they're super intense. Everybody has high beams now for regular fucking headlights on their cars. Listen, 30 minutes before you go to bed, get that shit away from you. Turn off the router, the Wi-Fi router in your house. Turn it off. Tell everybody, hey, it's time to go to bed. My dad would lay down the fucking law. Once he said we going to bed, everybody is going to bed. He didn't want to hear a TV on. He didn't want to hear no fucking music. He was the king of that domain. And what he said was the law. And so once he said it's time to go to bed, guess what happened? Everybody went to fucking sleep.
It didn't have to make sense. You just had to do it. You didn't have to agree. It wasn't for you to think about.
Oh,
just do it.
Just fucking do it. Why? Because it was his house.
Hey, like one of the conversations I had with my mom, she was going through a difficult situation with somebody. And my mom would do things like, I'm going to the casino, I'm going here, I want to go do this. And I'm like, Ma, you're in your frustration, you're trying to change your behavior because this other person. I said, you're consuming poison hoping that other nigga dies. That's not healthy. Don't change your behavior when you're not wrong. Don't sit here and try to get away from something that this is your house. You're laying down the law. And if a motherfucker don't abide by it,
Get the fuck out.
get the fuck out. You might have to spank. If in the case of a child, you might have to spank them. You might have to discipline, correct their behavior. And upon an adult, they don't get to be there. I have no reason to deal with you. And like I said, that's how we are now. We try to placate ourselves with.
Think about what this does, though. By claiming your domain wholly and
Yes.
fully, but doing it in a way that is righteous and in a way that is not harmful to everybody, what you're doing is you're protecting that place.
You're protecting your peace, your sanctity. The one place where you can go
Talk
in this
about
world
it.
and be yourself and be healthy.
Talk that shit.
Sometimes you're not always the healthiest, but it takes a while to get healthy. So when you're you're playing football, you need to rest up. This is where you need to rest up. You should not be bombarded with with radiation, with different messages, with TV and your boss calling and mail. You should be able to shut that shit off. And the one place you can should be your home. And don't get me wrong, sometimes when you're younger, you might have roommates, you might have to share a domicile as you work towards a goal. You see foreigners when they come here, there's a bunch of people living there, but then they get their own shit eventually. So I get it. It might not be the ideal situation, but it's still the safest situation you got, and you need to maintain that. And letting somebody else into your home, especially if you give them permission and they disrupt that shit, you need to defend yourself. You need to defend your peace. That's all we're saying.
But
sometimes
you're actually also talking about karmic consent.
yes,
This
giving them consent.
Listen, protect your peace. Protect your peace in your home, in your love life, in your relations, in your workplace, in your vehicle, on your phone, in your spiritual, practice spiritual hygiene, all that shit. It's all related. It's all the same thing. Because, if you yield in the smallest way, and if you just keep yielding more and more and more, you become a pushover. And you have no rules. You don't have a Budo code that you live by. Live by a code.
By somebody else. Like whether you know it or not, you're going to be controlled. And sometimes I don't want to fight back, or I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to put them out. Nigga, put them out. Make them uncomfortable, because they're making you so uncomfortable where you're used to being uncomfortable and you don't speak up anymore. You don't want to. No, you're giving them permission to take away the one thing that you belong, and that belongs to you. That's your peace. That's your identity. Don't let them take your identity, my nigga, for real.
But I just remember once my father said something, that was it. There wasn't no talk back from his wife. There wasn't no talk back from the kids. Everybody did what the fuck he said. Because that's how it was. That's it. That's it. If you don't like it, you can get the fuck out. What happened to guys like that? Where the fuck are those people?
But you know what? There's a bunch of those people. They're not on social media. They're not trying to convince you that what they're doing is right or wrong. What happens is somebody talks to their wife, and the wife says, "Hey, when my husband says goes, he's abusive," and everybody has an opinion about it. But fuck that. You don't rent out space in my head. How I run my crib is how I run my crib. I've done some mean things, I know that, but it was to keep my peace, and it was also to teach my kids a lesson. Sometimes you're wrestling with you wrestle with your mate on how to raise children because there's so many messages out there. But then when it gets out of hand, they want you to come spank somebody, and I'm like, "See, told you." But now you created a situation where it's difficult to discipline because your words have no power. My words had no power because you erased that. Now I got to go in and get physical. And then when you get physical, motherfuckers you got neighbors and, these single women. I have no problem with a single woman because I came from a single woman. My mom is that situation. She raised me, but she wasn't raising me to be a pussy, and nobody else had any jurisdiction in my mom's home. Nobody. And what happens is that these people sit here and coddle your children and make your children weak, even though they see it didn't work with their children. You know, their kids is all kinds of therapy and shit, and all kinds of other goofy shit. And you know, they got these complexes. Instead of you trying to fix the complex that your child has and give them skill, you just want a diagnosis. Single moms want diagnosis, but they don't want solutions. They don't want to make that child be an adult. They just want them to make them feel better. And that child's job is not to make you feel better. And when a difficult situation happens, which I'm dealing with one right now, my ex is more worried about how she feels about it than how it needs to be addressed. So I had to go address it last night. You can't you can't negotiate with terrorists and you can't negotiate with children. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if your child has you know what, you should have an open mind because if there's an open communication, you're gonna like, okay, I know when they're being legit, but you also need to know when they're full of shit, not being healthy, creating, being sneaky, underhanded, and lying, that kind of shit. So, and you got to address it.
Okay, so in closing, understand there is a fine line between tolerance and consenting to some bullshit. Do not give up your karmic consent. Do not give them your karmic consent.
Yeah, I don't go to puffy parties. Fuck that shit. There's no consent. No consent.
That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.